To know your enemy, you must listen to what they say when they believe no one is listening. In the crucible of the Second World War, the German Wehrmacht for a time saw itself as the master of modern warfare. Its officer corps, steeped in Prussian military tradition, was proud, professional, and confident. They often looked upon their new American adversaries with a mix of curiosity and contempt, viewing them as a mongrel society incapable of producing true warriors. But by 1943, that arrogance began to crack. On the battlefields of North Africa, Sicily, and France, a new breed of American commander emerged, men who were aggressive, relentless, and brutally effective. These weren't armchair generals. They were commanders who learned and adapted, who understood the German way of war and turned it back against them. In their post-war memoirs, in captured documents, and in prisoner interrogations, German officers began to speak their names, sometimes with grudging respect, often with frustration, and occasionally with genuine fear. This is a countdown of the American generals who got inside their heads. Ranking generals is a difficult business, but for this list, we're looking through a unique lens, the eyes of the enemy. Our criteria are based entirely on documented German perspectives. First, direct impact and tactical fear, which generals commanded units that the Germans dreaded facing on the line, whose presence on a front caused German commanders to alter their plans. Second, strategic respect. Which leaders did German generals mention in their post-war writings as being particularly skilled, aggressive, or unpredictable? And third, doctrinal threat. Which generals embodied a style of warfare, be it airborne assault, night fighting, or armored blitzkrieg, that the Germans found most disruptive and dangerous? Now, before we begin, we must address the titan of the European theater, the man who commanded the entire Allied war effort, General of the Army, Dwight D. Eisenhower. On a strategic level, the German High Command feared Eisenhower more than anyone. They didn't fear him as a tactical opponent, but as the master architect of their ultimate destruction. He was the man who wielded the full crushing might of the Allied industrial machine and orchestrated the largest invasion in human history. The German fear of Eisenhower was the fear of the unstoppable tide. But this list is dedicated to the field commanders, the generals who inspired direct immediate fear in the soldiers they faced in battle. Eisenhower wasn't a piece on the chessboard. He was the grandmaster playing the game. For that reason, he occupies this unique position of ultimate respect just outside our tactical countdown. Similarly, we acknowledge the commanders who pioneered a form of warfare the Germans feared, airborne assault. Matthew Ridgway of the 82nd Airborne and 18th Airborne Corps and his successor, James M. Gavin, were tough frontline leaders. It was often the concept of their airborne divisions, a force that could appear from nowhere to seize critical objectives that the Germans dreaded, a strategic threat that changed the entire shape of the battlefield. The Germans had a healthy respect for the American 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red one, and in North Africa and Sicily, the man who made them a fearsome fighting force was Major General Terry D. Mesa Allen. Nicknamed Terrible Terry, Allen was an unconventional, hard-fighting, hard-drinking commander who, along with his deputy Theodore Roosevelt Jr., fostered a spirit of aggressive independence in his division. What did the Germans fear about Allen's command? His mastery of night attacks. While many commanders on both sides were hesitant to fight in the dark, Allen drilled the 1st Infantry relentlessly in night operations, believing it reduced casualties and terrified the enemy. German units that felt secure at dusk would suddenly find themselves in a desperate close-quarters fight as Allen's Big Red one seemingly appeared out of the darkness. Though Allen was controversially relieved of command after the Sicily campaign, he would return to lead the 104th Timberwolf Division. He immediately molded them into another elite night-fighting unit that terrorized German defenders across France and Germany. For the German soldier on the front line, the knowledge that a terrible Terry Allen division was across from them meant that the night offered no safety. If Terry Allen was the brawler, Lucian Truscott was the consummate and perhaps most underrated American professional. A cavalryman with a quiet, growly voice, Truscott was known for his rigorous real-world training and his absolute dedication to his men. The Germans first encountered Truscott's standards of excellence in Sicily, where his 3rd Infantry Division consistently outmaneuvered, and outfought their opposition. He instituted a punishing marching pace of 4 mph, far faster than the standard, which became famously known as the Truscott Trot. This relentless mobility repeatedly surprised German commanders, allowing Truscott's division to cover vast distances and appear where they were least expected. But it was at the Anio beach head in Italy where Truscott earned the deep respect of his German adversaries. Taking command of 6th Corps at a moment of crisis, he completely reorganized the failing defenses and instilled a new sense of purpose. The German commander in Italy, Field Marshal Albert Kessler, a formidable opponent in his own right, launched massive counterattacks to destroy the beachhead. Truscott's brilliant and stubborn defense held. He was not flashy, but he was unshakable. German commanders who valued professionalism above all else recognized Truscott as a master of his craft. He was not a showman, but a brilliant, tough, and highly competent general who commanded one of the best-trained and best-led divisions in the theatre. Facing Truscott didn't mean you were facing a brawler. It meant you were facing a superior professional who would not make mistakes. There is tactical brilliance, and then there is the simple, terrifying application of overwhelming, relentless force. Major General James Van Fleet was a master of the latter. His philosophy was brutal and direct. Find the enemy, fix them in place with infantry, and then utterly annihilate them with artillery. The Germans learned to fear Van Fleet's methods during the Normandy campaign and the brutal fighting in the Hürtgen forest. As commander of the 90th Infantry Division, and later the 3rd Corps under Patton, Van Fleet's signature was the Van Fleet load, a concentration of artillery fire 10 times more intense than the standard. German soldiers spoke of the sheer terror of being on the receiving end of these barges, which seemed to leave no inch of ground untouched. In post-war interviews, captured German officers expressed a kind of awe at the sheer industrial might. Van Fleet was willing to expend. While they might criticize American infantry tactics as unsubtle, they had a deep and abiding fear of American artillery. Van Fleet was the ultimate personification of that fear. He was not interested in clever maneuver. He was interested in systematic destruction. To face a Van Fleet command was to face the full, terrifying power of the American arsenal, directed by a commander with an iron will and a singular focus on obliterating his target. It was a style of war the resource-starved Wehrmacht simply could not match. Fear for the German military wasn't just about the soldier in the foxhole. By 1944, it was also about the enemy they could not fight, the one that appeared in the skies above. And no American general was more responsible for the systematic destruction of Germany from the air than Curtis LeMay. As a commander in the 8th Air Force, LeMay was a ruthless innovator. He developed the combat box formation, a tightly packed defensive arrangement of bombers that created a fortress of overlapping machine gun fire, making it incredibly dangerous for German fighters to attack. He was also relentlessly aggressive, insisting his bombers fly straight and level through flak, filled skies to ensure maximum bombing accuracy regardless of the cost. In their memoirs, high-ranking Luftwaffe officers like Adolf Galland wrote extensively about the desperate struggle against the 8th Air Force. They respected the courage of the American bomber crews and feared the industrial logic of their commanders. LeMay represented an unyielding mathematical approach to war. He was willing to trade planes and men to erase Germany's ability to fight, destroying its oil refineries, aircraft factories, and transportation networks. While ground generals fought for yards of terrain, LeMay was fighting to dismantle the entire German war economy. To the German High Command, this was a terrifyingly effective strategy. They could win a battle against an infantry division, but they could not stop hundreds of bombers day after day from turning their industrial heartland to rubble. LeMay was a new kind of threat, one that made a mockery of traditional front lines. There can be only one name at the top of this list, the one American general whose name became synonymous with the very type of warfare the Germans had perfected, the armored blitzkrieg, George S. Patton Jr. In post-war interrogations and writings, the highest-ranking German commanders reserved a special kind of respect for Patton. Alfred Jodl, Hitler's chief of operations, called him the American Judidierian, the highest possible compliment, comparing him to the father of the panzer forces. General Gunter Blumrud described him as the most aggressive panzer general of the Allies, a man of incredible initiative and lightning-like action. What did they fear? His speed, his audacity, his complete unpredictability. Patton embodied the hold them by the nose and kick them in the rear philosophy. His whirlwind campaign across France after the Normandy breakout shocked the German high command. They were used to a more cautious, deliberate Allied advance. Patton's Third Army was a torrent, constantly flanking, encircling, and destroying German units before they could establish a new defensive line. One German prisoner lamented, "This Patton gives us no rest. He attacks day and night. He drives his men as hard as he drives us." The Germans respected and feared Patton so much that the Allies used him as their ultimate decoy. The success of the D-Day deception, Operation Fortitude, hinged on German belief that Patton, their most dangerous adversary, would lead the main invasion at the Podoli. They saw in Patton a reflection of their own best commanders, a master of mobile warfare who waged war with a ferocity and speed they understood and dreaded. He was the one Allied general who truly played their own game and beat them at it. Terry Allen's night fighters, Lucian Truscott's professionals, James Van Fleet's artillery sledgehammer, Curtis Lame's sky fortresses, and George Patton's armoured spearhead.